Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at the Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land,
Hey, Debbie Heiser here with Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love to do without sacrificing what's important to them. For me, I find it as my calling to help business owners really get crystal clear on what they want their life to look like and how they want to feel about that so that they can show up doing and being the person that they want to be. And doing that without sacrificing what they value the most, right? So today, I am here to talk to you some more about money, and one of my favorite topics because, excuse me, earlier, if you haven't listened to the earlier one this month, please go back and listen to the solo episode because I talk a lot about money stories. I give you some exercises to do. And in this one, it might be a little shorter podcast today, but I want to talk to you about the universal law of compensation. Because regardless of whether or not you are in business on your own or whether or not you are someone that is a career person, this law follows true for both of those. So we are compensated according to the need for what you do. So I would ask you, and you might note this month I've been a little more workshoppy. I would ask you, if you're driving, please don't do this, but give some thought to it. Otherwise, list out, what is it that you do? How do you serve people? How do you show up in the world? If you're a leader, how are you leading people that's different, or what are you doing to help people in situations that you're leading in a corporate environment or a small business? If you're owning that business, what service or product do you provide? Then it's about your ability to do that. So what makes you different? How do you show up in the world? Like for me, I try to show up very generous, but also knowing that like generosity is a great thing and I'm not expecting anything in return. But then there's also this art to everyone becomes my friend and family. So it's like you can't have the friend and family discount because it's also how I make my living so that I can pay my bills and show up then in this realm of gratitude and expressing love to people by serving and helping them basically get out of their own way, right? So, there's an art to also understanding that giving things away is great and you gain from giving, and you don't give in order to gain. That's not the purpose of that. That's kind of the intention is different. But ultimately, then also being okay to ask for compensation for what you do, right? So it's about the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and then the difficulty there is in replacing you. And that's that differentiator. One of the things I was talking to my marketing person about is I feel like what differentiates me as a coach is a couple of things. One, I've had a lot of background being an executive, doing vision strategy sessions, then also being able to take the tactical, like get shit done approach, like how do I go about getting the things done and getting there, but then also this other side around like the dreaming and the how do I tap into my subconscious brain. I've done a lot of studying on neuroscience and how do I take that and uncover and unwind those things to keep my level of vibration high and my energy level high to then make those things happen. And so it's about having then the idea, and this is the second part of what I believe sets me apart, having the idea and then having me as a coach help you build that belief in yourself and sometimes borrowing that belief from me to then go forward and take inspired action. I hear a lot of coaches talk a lot about theory. I talk a lot about theory. But then what sets me apart is the idea of we take inspired action. And it's not just action. There were many years I spent being busy, right? Like doing things and staying in this churn of busyness, when in fact, it wasn't really getting me any closer to my goal. So when you think about this law of compensation, it's then also about really identifying what does set you apart. And if you struggle with that, call me. Let's talk about it. Because sometimes I found for myself, even having a coach, it helps you see things from a different perspective. Because a lot of times, neuroscience wise, our subconscious has this message. And earlier we talked about money messages, but has these messages that we're not conscious of, hence why it's in our subconscious. So then once someone else is able to bring it to our conscious by asking questions, and then we uncover what that conscious is, then awareness is that's a first step, because once you're aware of it, fortunately, you can't go back, right? But once you're aware, then you can take some action around it. Where when you're not aware, I don't know about you, but I've had situations where, in AA and Al-Anon, they talk about insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Well, if I'm doing things over and over again and I expect it to be different, that is insanity. But I won't know to do anything different unless I become aware of the patterns. And many times the big breakthroughs that I've had have been because I've had my girlfriends that we went to Paris together, masterminding and being upfront about things they observe in me, or affirm certain beliefs that I have in believing in myself. Coaches that have pointed out or helped me see and become aware of things, because I can't take action on something I'm not aware of. Right. And one of my mentors said, you can't be held responsible for behaviors or actions that you're not even aware. Right. And so for me, this idea of enlightenment even is becoming more and more aware. So whether that's universe for you, Buddha, for me, it's God, like becoming more and more aware. And I feel like the universe or spirit works through people. And so being able to understand then where this is happening, right? Like, and being aware of people and the messages that I'm gaining from them. So that's kind of that piece. So I want to take a quick break here, and then we're going to come back to the law of compensation and talk a little more about it. Are you a woman who's worn out from wearing all the hats that we wear, and you're really ready for a break? Well, join us for an empowering experience in beautiful Sandpoint, Idaho from October 24th to the 27th. This exclusive retreat is designed for women just like you. The Cast Your Vision retreat will have transformative workshops, expert guidance and coaching from me, and a supportive community to hold your hand along the way. Don't miss this opportunity to invest in yourself and your future. Get crystal clear on who you want to be and make that dream into a reality. Register today with the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Okay, we are back. So the law of compensation, we're compensated according to the need for what we do, our ability to do it, and then the difficulty it is in replacing us. And when you think about that, if you're in business for yourself, it's a good idea. Take a chart and just say, what do I do? What do I provide? I like to say, how do you show up in service to the world? Then, like, what's your ability to do it? Now, sometimes people get caught in this, right? They think, oh, I need the gazillion certifications. I need to take more classes. And that's just this feeling of inadequacy to go out and do what you're called to do. So don't get too stuck in that. For me, I set aside time to learn. Like, that is part of my job. I'm reading constantly. I've got books that I'm constantly looking through, podcasts I'm listening to, all as a part of the work that I do, right? Because I need to be learning and growing if I'm offering up to other people to learn and grow as well. So that's another piece of, like what I do is I continue to grow so I can share my experiences with other people. Now, once we uncover that and we have those three columns about what we do, how we show up in service in the world, our ability to do it, and what gives us that ability, right? So for me, I have 20 plus years of experience coaching people. And even prior to that, right? I owned my own business. That was my first job in high school. I taught piano lessons. And so it's about like our ability to be able to do it, and coaching in corporate America really taught me, and particularly being in charge of numerous training operations, this ability to listen and really listen to what's not being said too. And then the difficulty in replacing us, like list out those things. What's the differentiator for you? And this difficulty there is in replacing you. I will tell you, a hot button I have is I see a lot of coaches create loyalty packs, right? With or codependency, thinking that you can't survive without having them as a coach. And I don't agree with that. Like my job is to help you. It reminds me of when my son was younger and I made him start doing his laundry, because my job was to teach him how to be a functioning adult in this world, and not just a functioning adult, but a well organized, like healthy adult. So part of what I feel like my role is as a coach is to help people uncover those things. Now, it sometimes hurts me because trying to get testimonials, I really push it back on uncovering, I ask the right questions so that people can become aware and uncover what's stopping them, what actions they need to take, and then they go forward and do that. Now, the other side to this law of compensation is that in order to receive more and begin to draw ourselves to something larger, we have to become too large for our present place. Right. So this awareness is what that's about, right? Like having the awareness. I remember when I was having like $5,000 months, and then I was having $10,000 months, and then $15,000 months, and then 20 and $25,000 months. And that then becomes the threshold, right? Like anything under that is not, I'm not available for. And so that's part of that, like drawing you into something larger creates, you have to have that awareness and let go of the messages about becoming larger, right? And having that growth. So the other piece of this is that we do that also then by solving bigger problems and being of greater service. Every time I've raised my rates, I add more value. And not to the point where value and time don't necessarily always equate. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a ton more time, but it's about being of greater service, increasing our capability and our ability by owning our value and our unique self-expression. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that I'm on a little bit of a rant about lately is that if I hear one more time a coach say, charge what you're worth, and I've done it too, because so many of us have self-worth issues. We grew up questioning ourselves. We grew up not necessarily having the confidence, and just a lot of messages. I'm not going to get into those in this podcast, but where we learned potentially and our hearts were hurt. We learned tribal things that, not to be as vocal or as big, maybe making yourself smaller because someone else needed to be bigger, whatever the case would be. When we step into our worth, most people have issues with their worth. I struggle with it too. There are times that I'm thinking, for me, it's easy to coach. And I think, like, people can do this on their own. And then I'm like, no, they can't, right? That's the same reason I pay a coach. And partially because I'm too close to my own stuff. I have a mentor that says, when you sit in your shit long enough, it stops smelling, right? Which is so true. And so having that other perspective helps with that. So when we talk about worth, don't charge what you're worth, because actually, when we think about charging what we're worth, that comes from a fear, a scarcity perspective, versus what are you providing and what drops in for you to charge, right? And then it's about believing that there's a worth there. And okay, I just said the word worth, right? That's funny. But that like there's a value there that's being you're being compensated for. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this woman even said, for those of you that come from a biblical background, she even talks about in Proverbs, it says you should be paid for your wisdom, right? So I want you to think about that. Now, when we think about the law of compensation, it's important to celebrate and embrace the work that you do, because this raises your vibration. And when we think about being in the gain, seeing all the things that we've done to move and how we've moved versus in this world, we're taught to look for deficits, right? Like, okay, here's where we were and we've made progress, but look at all the stuff we still have to do to get to where we want to go. That's gap thinking. And we want to be in the gain, because that gain then is where we've made our progress. We've made some goals, and it's important to set many goals along the way. And then to celebrate. I talk to so many people that they're like, oh yeah, I did that. And I'm like, excuse me, can we celebrate that? That's huge, right? And so the law of cause and effect is in this too, because it's the action that you take to spark the change. And then the law of compensation is the energetic return of your inspired action. So that action comes from the cause and effect, and that inspired action that you choose to take. And that's the spark. That's the motivation to get you going. And then the law of compensation is that energetic return of what that inspired action was. So a lot of times I can figure out that based on the activity I did 90 days ago to connect with people will determine the outcome a lot of times of the compensation that's coming in, because that inspired action is the ignition. Then what comes in from that is the law of compensation. So I just dropped a whole lot of bombs on you as far as like knowledge, information. Please feel free to reach out. I love talking about these subjects. And I'm just so grateful to you to listen, or that you've been listening. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, with that, it's a wrap. Have a great week. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.
See the colors